Picard.
And on that note, for the final time this season, let's take a look at Star Trek Picard Season 2 in an episode review capacity. This was Episode 10, the season finale, entitled Farewell. And that's what we're going to do throughout this episode, say farewell to everything that we've learned and all the characters we've met along the way in Season 2. So the very first thing we do in this episode is start with a 2-minute and 11-second recap of all the important things we've learned and experienced and fretted over throughout this season. So you might actually be able to go into this episode without watching the prior 9 and have a good shot of figuring out where we are. So we open on one of the only good shots of Chateau Picard we've had this season. In the daylight, it doesn't look muddy, it doesn't look like a mess. Actually, kind of a good beauty shot. I was interested in this shot, so well done. Good way to start off. Then we have a little bit of a problem right off the bat, because the characters are discussing the bullet holes from the attack that happened last episode, and Picard basically tells us that these bullet holes have always been there in this exact spot ever since the Picard family took back the chateau whenever they reclaimed it after World War II. He remembers these bullet holes being in the exact same position. So, how does this work? They're saying these bullet holes mean history is on track. Well, we've kind of already seen some changes in the timeline. If history is on track because of these events, that means technically Guinan should have known Picard from the time travel in Time Zero. We find out that's not the case. So, and things we see later in this episode seem to indicate maybe the Federation and things are back on track, but, history has clearly been changed from the way we saw things in TNG. So does that mean Picard grew up with dead Borg statues melded into the wall of his home? Because we did see them get beamed there in the last episode, and as far as I know, there was no way of them getting them out, so there's probably dead Borg ex-soldier beamed into the walls, and those could have been the monsters Picard saw as a child. So then, because of our characters' inability to stay together, they decide they need to split up almost immediately. Talon, aka Not Laris, the Gary 7 type supervisor with her little servo pen. Don't think they actually ever called it a servo, but that's what they called it in the original Star Trek series, so I'm going to go with that. She basically says that they need to infiltrate the launch to make sure Renee Picard does what she needs to do, this whole Europa mission that's been touched on earlier and then kind of forgotten about. That is now the main point of the rest of this story. So she needs to get over there to make sure Soong doesn't screw up the timeline by doing something to Renee Picard. She said they just broke quarantine because that's the protocol. They'll break quarantine right before the launch. And she's going to beam herself over there to, in essence, save history. And Picard gives her kind of this knowing look like, wait a minute, I know what you're going to do. And right before she beams up, Picard does one of the things we've seen a couple times in Trek where right as the beam initiates, he's like, whoop! And he hitches a ride, so to speak, in her transporter beam. And they beam away. Then we have this nice, interesting shot of basically the solar system from Europa. I'm assuming they're supposed to be saying this is Europa here. Obviously, it's not. Anyways, we have this nice, cool establishing shot traveling backwards from there across the solar system back to Earth, and then we get a little zoom in of the rocket she's going to be taking on her trip, her mission, her time travel shenanigans way of protecting the future that we know and love. The rest of the crew, and this would only be Rafi, Rios, and 7 of 9 at this point, because last episode Jurati left with the Borg, left as the Borg actually, and as we know, Elnor has been dead for quite a while, so they beam to Soong's house because apparently they were able to track his GPS. By track his GPS, I don't know what they mean. Do humans have GPS implants in 2024, or were they tracking his phone? Not entirely sure what they meant by tracking his GPS, but I'll leave that alone because it's not really vital to the show. So they travel into his house through Talon's transporter beam. They hear him basically dictating the way he's going to stop the launch. But lo and behold, that's not the case. they were tricked. They were duped because Picard, the same moment they realize Soong isn't at home, Picard notices him at the Europa launch. Dun, dun, dun. He had left basically some sort of dictation audio file on his computer playing so that it sounded like he was home. I don't know who that was for. So was he doing that live? Or did he sit down at his computer, dictate this whole long audio file to play for the off chance somebody would be coming in to listen to it? That seems like a lot of extra work to sit down and record a fake audio file, then leave it on play for the 4 seconds it took them after arrival to realize he wasn't there. Kind of an interesting plan, I guess, but maybe he had nothing else better to do. He was waiting for the quarantine to break so he could go, so who knows? Kind of interesting. So, our players are in place. The chess match has been set. What's going to happen? Let's find out next. Soong had a backup plan. He had left 4 drones in his place. 4 war drones, I guess, that were going to, I suppose their intention was to go and blow up the Europa mission if his in-person plan A didn't work. So Rios, Rafi, and 7 of 9 need to figure out how to disable these. They're encrypted, obviously, so they can't just shenanigan their way through it. One thing I would question is, now that 7 of 9 is Borg again, she has been reinstated with her Borg technology, couldn't she have taken her little nanoprobes, injected the system, and overwhelmed it quite quickly, because this is pretty primitive technology compared to what she would have had? Again, not a plot hole, just saying. Also, they claim that they were booby-trapped, so they couldn't just bash them. What we see later, I don't know, couldn't they have just covered the hole in the roof? Or, I don't know, there may have been another way, transported them out of there, whatever. Basically, they need to try and hack into these drones to stop them, and of course they don't have enough time to do that because stakes and tension and all of that. Anyways, over here, Soong is back to his benevolent philanthropist. I'm still kind of confused. On one hand, we're seeing him as a disgraced scientist, this mad evildoer. On the other hand, he's a benevolent scientist to society, donating all this money. He's at all of these, high-end parties and whatnot, thought of as this great man. Which is it? Is he this horrible war criminal, or is he this billionaire genius philanthropist that everyone loves? It seems like they keep going back and forth, but here he's basically using that money he donated to say, you need to let me in and see the astronauts before launch, even though that's not protocol. My money bought me 5 minutes with them, right? And they're like, oh, I guess so, Mr. Soong. Dr. Soong? I guess Dr. Soong. And then we find out the grand plan of not Laris. And this is quite interesting. So Laris said she's had this plan forever. She's been planning this forever. And her grand plan was to beam in, steal a uniform, and immediately get caught. Like, as soon as she walks in the room to see Rene Picard's like, who are you? Why are you wearing Maya's uniform? You're nobody I've ever met before. What the hell? So, clearly this grand plan wasn't as foolproof as she thought. But, and I will say but, this was actually kind of a good scene, because they had the ability to chat. They had the ability for the first time to have a conversation together. Not Laris basically comes clean about who she is, what she is, that she's been, for lack of a better term, Rene Picard's guardian angel her entire life, comes out and says, oh, this fancy necklace you have, I gave that to you as a child when you were 10. Remember earlier in the series we learned that she was some sort of genius prodigy who learned how to sail sailboats when she was like 10. She's like, well, remember that time you crashed your sailboat? I was there at the shore after you were rescued, and I gave you this necklace to kind of think of me. So I've been watching out for you the whole time, just so you know. Then we cut back to the drones. They're fighting around. Finally, at the last minute, Rafi kind of just yanks a wire out, and Rios gains control of one of them. Takes him a minute to figure it out because, quote-unquote, these analog controls are difficult, something like that. He manages to take control, and then he just flies one of the drone through the other 3. Just choo-choo-choo, and takes them out. So, A for effort. Good job, Rios. He saves the day from Plan B. Plan A, still proceeding with Dr. Soong. Here we see Renee Picard coming out to talk to Soong. Basically, she says, "Oh my god, there's some crazy woman in there who claims that she's from the space future and she wants to protect me." He's like, "Don't worry, honey," touches her on the face. And then she's like, "I don't feel so well, Mr. Soong, Dr. Soong." And he takes this thing off and says, "Well, that's because I just injected you with a fast-acting neuropoison, so you're about to die and I'm about to save the future, baby doll." And then basically, I don't know if this was supposed to trick us as an audience or not, but it's pretty clear this was never Renee Picard. This was Talon, not Laris, using her holographic disguise technology. Now. Two thoughts come to mind. Three thoughts, actually. I'll save one for later. She uses this hologram face-concealing technology to become Renee Picard. A, why did she have to become Renee Picard and be injected with neuropoison? I understand the Borg Queen said one Renee must live while another must die. Okay, but why couldn't she change form into something else? Like, I don't know, the President of the United States or some high-ranking military official and just detain Soong for a couple of minutes while the real Renee got to the rocket. Why did she have to become a copy of Renee specifically to be a scapegoat that would die? I mean, I feel like there could have been other uses for her technology. B, remember when we first met the Watcher back in season 3, maybe 4, when she was talking to Picard through all of these white-eyed, possessed people? What happened to that ability? It hasn't been used since that first little intrigue of who the Watcher was. What's going on with that? Did she just lose the ability to mind control people? Why couldn't she mind control Soong? Take control of Soong for a couple of minutes, maybe it's not ethical, but she didn't seem concerned about taking control of people's bodies before. Why couldn't she take control of Soong and just have him go sit in a room for 5 minutes? Why couldn't she take control of security and basically, while she was in control of the security guard, let it be known that this guy had some sort of poison on him? There seems like a multitude of options here besides killing herself, basically. I don't know. It seems like she forgot about her magic power suddenly, and there was a lot better uses for her second magic power, the hollow face fake thing. Also, third point, remember earlier in the series they mentioned that, remember this hollow technology needs 8 hours to recharge after I use it. Why did that never come into play? Why was that mentioned? I feel like it was Chekhov's hollow emitter or something, except it was never paid off. Why mention that ability, that flaw, that pivotal role of the technology if we're never going to pay it off? Maybe it got cut for time. I don't understand why anything got cut for time because there was so little happening throughout half the series. Then we have this, it's actually kind of a nice scene for what it is. For the grand scheme of the story, not so great, but Picard and the actress playing Renee Picard, who's actually not Laris, aka Talon, in disguise, she realizes she's dying, and she and Picard kind of cuddle up and have this nice conversation. First thing I can think of is how they're at this very pivotal, high security launch. How are they just wandering around? How do they just find a spot where nobody sees them? A, she's wearing a uniform of somebody who's supposed to be on the rocket right now. And they're right outside watching the rocket launch. It seems like it's just kind of convenient that they're able to not be seen. But, I guess it was a nice scene. She transforms back into Laris right as we see the liftoff, and Picard, in a nice bit of callback to the line that's been overused, "Look up. Yeah. Look up." And Picard kind of realizes now that he's got some feelings for her. She tells him that, not her, the actual real Laris from his time period. But now he's dealt with his traumas and whatever. She's like, "I've been in your head. You've obviously, through your guilt, saved planets worth of people throughout this galaxy. The biggest crime would be if you can't save yourself, if you can't get over yourself in love, Jean-Luc. You need to get out there in love. You need to take the bull by the horns, basically, and have a life for yourself, which comes back later in the series. That seems to be one of the main things that they're trying to go through here. So she dies. That's the end of Talon. That's the end of Not Laris. Some thought I just had, because I don't think they addressed it. What did they do with her body? Well, what happened to dead Laris's body, dead Talon? There's now a dead Romulan on Earth. Obviously, she died of a neurotoxin. I don't think it liquefied her body. So there is a dead body of this woman on Earth somewhere. What did they do with her? They don't have a ship. They do have access to her transporter technology. So what happens with that? What happens with all the tech she left here? Are they going to send a new supervisor? Maybe. Maybe they are. Maybe they just didn't have time to show us that. But that's kind of a big inconsistency if they leave her body here, because I forgot to mention earlier, while they were back at the chateau, they had a specifically planted scene of the characters saying, oh, these are all the items we brought back with us from the future. A couple of phasers, tricorders, whatever. We need to get them all together because their intention at this point is to live on Earth for the rest of their lives in the past, because as far as they know, they have no way to get back to their own time. That being said, Guinan most likely has access to a spaceship. How did she get to Earth? B, they have access to Not Laris's technology, her transporter. I don't know if that would allow them to transport off Earth, to contact somebody who does have the ability. I don't know. It just seems like there's ways for them to contact others outside of Earth. Maybe that would pollute the timeline, but it's already polluted because Guinan knows they're there and Not Laris knew they were there. So if they were to contact someone to at least get off the Earth, that would at least probably have less of an impact on changing the future than just living out their lives from 2024 onward. Just a thought. Then, remember Kore Soong, the Not daughter, the genetic experiment. She is using the VR technology we saw earlier to hack into and completely delete every possible little scrap of anything on Dr. Adam Soong's computer. So, she hacks in and deletes everything. Wipes out his entire system. I guess he didn't have backups or any real physical media, but then he does open a drawer, so I'm going back on that a little bit, and pulls out this file folder from 1996 Project Con funding report. And that's the last we see of him. Now, I was assuming the entire time Soong had used eugenics for his technology to create Kore Soong. That's probably still a viable solution. Two problems I have. A, what's going on from here? I mean, he ran over, more than two problems. He ran over Picard and brought a party with his Tesla. Is that ever going to come up again? Probably not, because the series is over. So that's that. He got busted for a lot of inhumane genetic experiments. Okay. Is he ever going to get busted for that? 3, he's got this Project Con stuff. They must know he has it. So I would feel like the military or whatever would probably, A, be aware of... I keep saying A. I'm going to stop saying A, B, C, 1, 2, and 3 because I'm just spitballing here. The government knows he has this. The government was in contact with him with all those soldiers that turned into Borg and just disappeared last episode. There's a lot of problems for this dude that I cannot rectify allowing him to live. He needs to have a child, so maybe the child he's going to have is based on this technology because the Soongs need to exist throughout the next few hundred years in order to get to Alton Soong from the last season of Picard. Obviously, Dr. Noonien Soong, who invented Data. Eric Soong, who did the augments in Enterprise. So I think this is supposed to be a reference to that. But there's a lot that still needs to happen, and it doesn't seem like his story jives with being able to be a free man to accomplish that, unless he strikes some deal with the military going forward, which we may see because I have a theory.